Welcome. Be sure to like and subscribe for more scary stories. Or I will come for you. If anyone would like early access to my latest stories and an ad-free listening experience, consider becoming one of the Curator's disciples. The link is in the description below. Without further ado, today's story, Economics of Revenge, by the Curator. I never expected to become the kind of person who hires a hitman off the dark web. I mean, that sounds like some hyper-edgy creepypasta crap, right? The kind of thing you read at 2 a.m. on some sketchy forum next to a screen cap of a red room and a thread about haunted computer games. But this isn't fiction. This isn't me trying to be edgy for the sake of a story. This is what actually happened during my junior year of high school. I'm not proud of it. I'm not even sure if I'm sorry, but I live with it every single day. So, if you're reading this, don't assume I'm some psychopath, some cold-blooded lunatic with no empathy. I wasn't even a violent kid. I didn't get into fights. I wasn't setting fires or torturing animals. I was just bitter and hurt, and cornered in a way that most people can't understand unless they've been there, like really been there. The kind of corner where everything feels small and hot and suffocating, like the walls are made of iron and they're closing inch by inch, day by day. It started with a teacher. I was 17 when this happened. Name's Jake. Well, not really, but that's what I'll go by here. At the time, I went to Barrow Ridge High, which was exactly as lifeless as it sounds. A 2-story prison of faded bricks and institutional green tiles, tucked away in one of those gray-washed suburbs where every street looks like a glitch in a simulation. Every street had some variation of meadow in the name. Meadow Lane, Meadow Court, Meadow Ridge. Like the developers ran out of creativity halfway through paving the town. Home wasn't any better. I lived with my dad, a steel plant shift worker who communicated mostly in grunts and shrugs. His hands were always caked with grime, no matter how much he scrubbed them. Not abusive or anything, not physically. Just emotionally vacant, like a ghost had slipped into a man's skin and decided to ride it out in silence. My mom? She left when I was 9. No note. No explanation. Just gone. I still remember the exact way the front door clicked shut that morning. The sound oddly soft for how loud it would echo through the next decade of my life. She sends a Christmas card every other year, sometimes with $20 tucked inside, like that makes up for everything. Anyway, I was one of those kids who confused teachers. I was sharp, scored high on tests, finished assignments before class even ended, but I had a mouth on me. A sarcastic streak that I didn't always rein in. I didn't tolerate being talked down to. Didn't play the game. That rubbed some of them the wrong way. Barrow Ridge was full of the kind of staff who acted like hall monitors in a fascist state, little tyrants who relished every ounce of control they were handed over kids just trying to survive the day. But no one, and I mean no one, was worse than Mr. Rourke. Mr. Rourke taught economics, like he was training soldiers for war. No jokes. No tangents, no room for curiosity or questions, just doctrine, drills, and deadlines. He had this rigid, ex-military aura, cropped hair so short his scalp shone through, shirts always stiffly pressed, shoes that clicked when he walked like he was marching into battle. His voice could strip paint off the walls, and his stare had the same warmth as an open grave. He didn't just discipline students, he broke them down, belittled them, humiliated them in ways that were quiet enough to go unreported, but loud enough to scar. I watched him call a girl decorative because she got a C on a pop quiz. Watched him crumple a boy's essay in front of the class and toss it in the trash can with a bored look on his face. He ruled through fear, and the worst part, he got away with it. Because his students crushed standardized tests. Because he prepared them for the real world. Because schools love results more than people. I tried to stay off his radar. I really did. Kept my head down, turned in my work, didn't challenge him even when I knew he was wrong. But the thing is, I was good at economics, maybe too good. And Rourke didn't like students who were confident, especially not ones who contradicted him. He didn't like not being the smartest person in the room. Which brings us to the day that changed everything. It was early October, the kind of crisp autumn morning that smells like burnt leaves and cheap coffee. The windows of the classroom were cracked open, and cold air slipped in around the edges. The whole room smelled faintly of body odor, dry erase markers, and whatever industrial cleaner the janitors used after hours. Rourke was lecturing on inflation and wage stagnation, pacing the front of the room like a drill sergeant with a pointer instead of a rifle. I'd been doing some independent reading, nothing extreme, just a few research papers I found interesting. MIT, Princeton, Brookings Institute stuff. I was fascinated by the nuance behind economic policies, the push and pull of theory versus practice. Rourke, on the other hand, taught like he was reading from a stone tablet. He made a sweeping statement that minimum wage increases always lead to unemployment. No exceptions, no qualifiers. Just cold, hard truth from the mountaintop. I raised my hand. Actually, I said, flipping open my tablet, there are a few studies from MIT and Princeton that suggest otherwise. One of them followed fast food jobs across state line. He cut me off. Mr. Tanner, this isn't a debate club. His voice didn't rise, but it had that dangerous edge, like he was daring me to keep going. But I did. God help me, I did. Just saying, it's a little more nuanced than you're letting on. A few kids chuckled, not at me, at him. That was the problem. His eye twitched, just barely. His jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle ripple beneath the skin. Stay after class, he said, low and flat. My heart skipped. I gave him a lazy shrug, tried to act cool. I felt that cold pit open up in my gut, like someone had dropped a stone into a dark well. He didn't sound angry. He sounded measured, like he'd already made a decision, and I was going to pay for it. Everyone filed out when the bell rang, that familiar screech echoing through the halls like a starting gun for freedom. Backpacks zipped, chairs scraped, and sneakers squeaked on the aging linoleum as the room emptied. I slung my bag over my shoulder, pretending like I'd already forgotten the warning. I wasn't planning to stick around. I figured maybe he'd cool off. Maybe he just wanted to bark and let it go. But before I could reach the door, the room jolted with the sound of it slamming shut. It wasn't just a firm close, it was a statement. Then, click. He locked it. That soft, mechanical snick of the lock sliding home felt louder than the bell. I turned, heart tripping in my chest. What are you doing? I tried to keep my voice level, but it cracked halfway through. He took a single step toward me, not rushed, not angry, just precise, like a machine running a program. And his face, God, his face, it wasn't twisted in rage or annoyance. It was blank, utterly blank, a void. That was the worst part. No yelling, No snarling. Just this flat, dead-eyed look, like a man about to swat a fly. "You like embarrassing people, don't you, Jake?" he said, voice low, clinical. My mouth opened, but no words came at first. My brain felt disconnected, like someone had unplugged me. It wasn't personal. I just... crack. The world tilted. A white-hot explosion tore across my face as his hand whipped across my cheek. I stumbled sideways, colliding with a desk. My bag slipped off my shoulder and thudded to the ground. My lip was split. I could taste blood, warm, metallic, and for a second, I didn't even understand what had happened. I just blinked at him, mouth hanging open, dazed. My cheek throbbed, a pulse of pain that felt alive under my skin. Then, oof, his fist drove into my gut, deep and brutal, like he was trying to punch through me. The air was ripped out of my lungs. My knees gave out. I hit the floor hard, knocking over a chair as I went down. The tile was cold against my cheek. I gasped, but couldn't suck in a full breath. My diaphragm locked up. My chest heaved uselessly. I lay there, coughing, eyes streaming from the pain, drool, and blood mixing at the edge of my mouth. I sounded like an animal, guttural and pathetic. I couldn't even curl into a ball. And then he crouched beside me, close enough that I could smell the bitter sting of his coffee breath and whatever he had for lunch. His voice came quiet, low, like a secret being passed between devils. "Embarrass me again and see what happens, you little fuck." He stood up calmly, straightened his tie with this casual tug like he'd just adjusted a loose shoelace. Then he walked to the door, unlocked it, and left without a word. Just like that. Gone. As if nothing had happened. And I lay there, muscles twitching, blood sliding down my chin and pooling under me like I was leaking everything that had kept me together. I didn't go to the nurse. I didn't want questions, didn't want whispers echoing through the hallways. I wasn't ready to see my name floating through gossip clouds while people speculated or made jokes. I just went home. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and stared at the stranger looking back at me. Red-eyed, lip crusted with dried blood, a blotchy bruise already blooming along my jaw like a rot. I dabbed at it with a wet cloth, wincing. Then I filled a Ziploc with ice and pressed it to my face until the cold numbed everything. The next morning, I tried to act normal, but Liam spotted it right away. Then Toby, then Eli. My guys. We'd been tight since freshman year, nerding out over movies, trading memes during homeroom, ditching school to play Mortal Kombat in Eli's basement. They weren't just friends. They were brothers. When I told them what happened, their faces went cold. Toby clenched his jaw so hard I could hear his teeth grind. Liam kept muttering, "Jesus Christ," under his breath like a broken record. Eli just stared at the floor, knuckles white on the desk edge. They were pissed. I mean, furious, but also powerless. That's the part nobody tells you about being a kid. You know things are wrong, horribly wrong, but you don't have the tools to fix them. Just rage. Just helplessness. Still, I tried. I wasn't about to let that bastard get away with it. I went to the principal, Miss Langley. Her office smelled like coffee and dry erase markers, and the walls were covered in framed certificates that meant nothing. She sat behind a huge desk, tapping at her keyboard as I explained everything, my voice shaking, my fingers twitching. She listened without listening, eyes glassy, fingers still hovering over the keys like she was multitasking in her head. When I finished, she tilted her head and gave me this bland, administrative smile. That look. the look of someone already rehearsing a denial. "No other witnesses?" she asked. I shook my head. Everyone else had already left. She tapped her pen on a post-it. "No cameras in the room?" "It happened too fast," I said. "I didn't think to record it." She gave a tiny, almost sympathetic sigh. "You understand that Mr. Rourke is a highly respected educator. He's been here 15 years. He served on the district curriculum board. He mentors student teachers. And that was that. Long story short, nothing happened. No investigation, no phone call home, no questions, no justice. She didn't just let it go, she flipped it. Blamed me. I got written up for ongoing classroom disruption. Suspended for 3 days. He got away with it. Totally, completely, clean. That's when the idea started to fester. Not in some cartoon villain kind of way. Not like I stormed out of her office with murder on my mind. It was slower than that. Rot doesn't appear all at once. It seeps. It eats. It grows. And somewhere deep in my chest, something old and soft began to harden. Something inside me whispered, if no one else is going to stop him, maybe I will. I didn't sleep for 2 days after the suspension. Not really. Not in the way sleep was supposed to work. I'd drift off in 30-minute snatches and jolt awake, heart pounding, shirt stuck to my back with cold sweat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, Rourke's dead-eyed stare, that sudden swing of his arm, the explosion of pain blooming across my face, the taste of blood. His voice echoed through my skull, over and over like a skipping record. "You like embarrassing people, don't you?" The worst part wasn't the pain. It was how easy it had been for him. Like flipping a switch. No hesitation. No remorse. Just pure, mechanical violence. And then he walked out like it was nothing. He'd done it before. I knew it in my gut. You don't get that calm after doing something like that unless it's a routine. I was just another tally mark on a long, hidden scoreboard. I tried not to think about it, but the thoughts kept looping. What if he did it again? What if he already had? Was there some other kid walking around school right now with a ruptured spleen or cracked ribs, too scared to say anything? I started flinching whenever anyone raised their hand too fast. Every sound felt louder, sharper. At lunch, I barely touched my tray. The nachos looked like coagulated vomit anyway. That weekend, we met up in Liam's basement. It was our usual hangout, the cave. Old leather couches with peeling corners, carpet that had been crusty since middle school, and shelves stacked with beat-up game cases, energy drink cans, and dusty Nerf guns. The overhead light had burned out months ago, so we sat with just the blue glow from the TV and the flicker of the old lava lamp. The air was thick with the usual stench, Mountain Dew, stale Doritos, and something that might have been wet socks. I paced back and forth across the rug like a caged animal, chewing my thumbnail to the quick. My nerves felt like exposed wires. I couldn't sit still. Eli was slouched on the couch, arms folded behind his head, staring blankly at the ceiling like he was trying to pretend none of this was real. Toby sat cross-legged on the floor, methodically twisting his Rubik's Cube with little plastic clicks, jaw clenched. It was his go-to-stress habit. Then Liam, who had been silent up to that point, just said it. "We could get someone to deal with him." I stopped pacing. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. "Deal with him how?" I asked. He didn't flinch, didn't smirk. He just looked up at me with this quiet, steady seriousness I wasn't used to seeing from him. Dark web. Now, I wasn't some sheltered kid. I'd heard of the dark web. Everyone had, but it was always in that mythological tone urban legends whispered between YouTube videos and Reddit threads. It was the stuff of edgy, late-night horror stories, red rooms, hitmen for hire, illegal surgeries, organ markets, live-streamed torture. But Liam? He was serious. He reached under the futon and pulled out his laptop, some old, scuffed Lenovo with peeling stickers from metal bands I'd never even heard of. Sunrot, blood incantation. He booted it up, the fan whining like it was begging for mercy. I got a Tails OS boot drive, he muttered, plugging in a USB. Runs independently from the main system. No trace. I snorted, a short burst of nervous laughter. You're way too into this. But I watched. We all did. Because deep down, past the fear and doubt, something darker had started whispering inside me. Something curious. And hungry. He launched the Tor browser. The screen flickered. Then came the rabbit hole. Directory lists full of sites with twisted, cryptic names. Mercury Box. Crimson Blood Shop. The pages loaded slow, painfully slow, and every site looked like it had been coded in Notepad by a lunatic. No flashy graphics. No colors. Just raw, brutal lists in courier font on black screens. We scrolled, found forums, posts, arguments between users with names like Nullskin44 and Ashrays. People swapping reviews like they were talking about Uber drivers. Then we saw it. A thread titled, "Anyone used efficient ends lately?" The link led to a page so stark it made my stomach turn. White text on black. We aren't fancy, but we get the job done. Hits, disposals, corrections, nationwide. That was it. No graphics. No banner ads. Just a menu, like a fucking drive-through. Basic beating, $500. Message, non-lethal, $2,000. Accidental hospitalization, $4,000. Final solution, $10,000. There was no drama to it. No frills. Just an ice-cold list. Like violence was a commodity. I scrolled further. Testimonials. Took care of my ex like she never existed. Satisfied client. Economical and discreet. Will use again. Anonymous. It was so surreal I almost laughed. Like reading Yelp reviews for a serial killer. Except this wasn't fiction. I felt sick. But I also couldn't stop reading. Toby spoke first. His voice was small, almost afraid. We could pool it. That's just $2,500 each. I felt my mouth go dry. My throat tightened. I stared at the screen. At that last line, final solution, $10,000. One line, no return. Eli finally sat up, his voice cracking. We can't actually do this, he whispered. This is murder. Liam turned to him, eyes hard. Was it murder when Rourke hit Jake? He could have killed him. What if next time it's someone smaller? A girl? A freshman? No one spoke. The only sound was the space heater clicking in the corner, sputtering weak warmth into the freezing room. I didn't sleep that night either. But something had shifted. By the next day, we voted. 3 for yes. 1 abstained. We went full tilt. Sold our gaming rigs. cashed in savings bonds. I pawned my PS5. That hurt more than I'll admit. 2 weeks later, we had just over 10 grand in Bitcoin. Liam took the reins. He used a mixer to tumble the coins, break up the trail, anonymize it, bounced it through 6 wallets, encrypted every message, then finally transferred it to a public address listed on the site. Contract ID C61128. Adult male target, educator, public kill, optional witnesses, no cleanup required. There was even a form, like we were ordering pizza. Target name, John Rourke. Location, Barrow Ridge High School, room 304. Preferred time frame, within 2 weeks. Preferred method, surprise. Message to accompany hit, you don't get to hurt anyone else. We hit submit. The page went black. A single line appeared. Contract received. Await silence. And silence was all we got. 3 days, nothing. 5 days. Still nothing. By day 7, my hands were shaking constantly. My thoughts were spiraling. I couldn't eat, could barely breathe. What if it was a scam? What if we'd just sent 10 grand to some hacker in a basement in Belarus? What if we were on some FBI list now? By Thursday, I was sure we were going to prison. By Friday morning, I was numb. I walked into economics like I was underwater. Rourke was already there, smug as ever. Crisp shirt, smug smile, tapping a pen against his clipboard. He looked at me once and smirked. That same fucking smirk. I wanted to leap across the desks and strangle him. And then the door opened. He wasn't a student, not even close. Late 30s. Thick beard, steel gray. Hoodie with the sleeves pushed up. Jeans that looked like they'd been dragged through gravel. Calloused hands. A faded knuckle tattoo. Guy looked like he worked construction, not walked into high schools. Rourke looked up from his clipboard, clearly confused. "Can I help you?" Another voice spoke before he could respond. Miss Reynolds, from the English department, walked in right behind him. "Class, this is Mr. Hayward. He's sitting in today for Mr. Dempsey, who called in sick." She smiled like it was just another Tuesday. I glanced at my friends. All of us knew. This was him, the hitman. But what happened next? No one could have predicted it. Mr. Hayward didn't say much at first. He gave this little half-smile, more of a twitch at the corner of his mouth than anything, and nodded slightly when Miss Reynolds introduced him to the class. The nod was polite, almost deferential, like he didn't want to interrupt, but it felt practiced, too still, too controlled. Miss Reynolds gave the usual spiel. "Mr. Hayward is observing today. Please give him a warm welcome," and then walked out, heels clacking lightly against the linoleum as the door clicked shut behind her. From that moment on, the energy in the room shifted. Rourke didn't even look up. He gave the kind of dismissive wave he reserved for janitors or late students. "Grab a seat," he muttered, already turning back to the whiteboard, chalk squealing as he launched into some ramble about marginal utility curves and opportunity cost. But Hayward didn't grab a seat. He didn't move at all. He just stood there, a few feet in from the door, hands buried deep in the pouch of his gray hoodie, not fidgeting, not looking around the room, just standing, silent, watching. His expression was unreadable, not cold exactly, more like absence, the complete lack of emotion. And I swear to God, in that stillness, something buzzed in the air, like the oxygen in the room had turned metallic. I wasn't the only one who felt it. You could see it in how Liam stopped chewing his pen cap, in how Eli sat up straighter, in how Toby's hands paused over the Rubik's Cube mid-turn. We all felt it, even if none of us could say why. Then, Rourke finally turned around, irritation prickling his tone. "Can I help you with something, sir?" Those would be the last words he ever spoke. Hayward's right hand moved. Smooth, deliberate. No panic. No hesitation. From inside the hoodie, he drew a shape, at first just a vague black mass. But the moment light caught the steel, every neuron in my brain lit up with a single scream of recognition. A gun. But not just any gun. Not the kind a cop might carry. Not the kind some punk waves around in a YouTube video. This was something else. A Desert Eagle. .50 caliber. I saw Eli's eyes go round like quarters. Liam sucked in a breath so hard it squeaked. Toby's pencil rolled off his desk and hit the tile with the tiniest clack, like the world was trying to keep making sound while we froze. And then, bang. No warning. No countdown. Just thunder. The first shot hit Mr. Rourke in the left temple. And I mean hit. Not pierced. Not entered. Hit. His skull didn't shatter. It detonated. It was like someone set off a firecracker inside a wet gourd. 1 second, he was talking. The next, half his head was gone. His face peeled apart like paper soaked in gasoline. A geyser of blood fanned out behind him, spraying the whiteboard in a wild arterial arc. Chunks of bone and brain matter slapped the wall with wet smacks. Something gelatinous and gray slid down his tie, smearing over the collar of his shirt. He stood for maybe half a second, arms out like a man crucified, then crumpled. His knees gave first, then the rest of him folded in on itself. His left leg twisted under him unnaturally, like the joint had melted. His body hit the floor with a dull, final sound, more meaty than I ever thought a human could sound. A little twitch in one hand, a jerky spasm in the foot, then nothing. Someone screamed, a high animal sound. Not a word, just fear, raw and primal. Then another scream. Chairs scraped, desks toppled. The room fractured into chaos. The sound of that gunshot kept ringing in my ears, louder than the sirens that would come later. I couldn't move. None of us could. It was like gravity had tripled. My legs were stone. My throat locked. My fingers dug into my thighs without me noticing. Nails leaving crescent moons through my jeans. People ran, stumbled, collapsed. A girl vomited directly onto her desk, the reek of bile and cafeteria, mac and cheese mixing with the coppery stench of blood. A guy tripped over a fallen chair and cracked his chin on the tile. Another just started sobbing, curling into the fetal position beneath his desk like he thought he could hide from it all. And in the middle of the room lay Mr. Rourke. What was left of him? His face, God, his face, it was half gone. The left side was just absence, a smoking hole of raw meat and cracked bone. What was left of his right eye stared upward, unblinking. A thick strand of what looked like optic nerve clung to his cheek like a jellyfish tentacle. A chunk of his jaw sat a few feet away, tongue still attached. The whiteboard behind him looked like modern art, an abstract smear of reds, pinks, grays. I spotted a piece of his scalp, stuck to it, hair still attached, dangling like a dead spider. Blood was everywhere, thick pools of it spreading out beneath him, seeping into the grout between the tiles, splattering the legs of desks. dripping in slow, rhythmic drops from the whiteboard frame. It smelled sharp and heavy, like rust and pennies and burnt meat. Then, boom, a second shot. Center mass. Completely unnecessary. There was no doubt Rourke was dead. But this shot felt intentional, a final period at the end of a sentence. The bullet ripped through his chest like paper. Ribs shattered. Blood sprayed straight up, coating the underside of the projector. A piece of sternum rocketed across the room, bounced off Toby's desk, and skidded across the tile like a poker chip. I think that second shot was the message, not just to Rourke, to us, to everyone. And then, just like that, it was over. Hayward turned calmly and walked to the door, gun hanging loose at his side like it was nothing more than a tool. He didn't run, didn't speak, didn't glance back at what he'd done. He opened the door and stepped into the hallway like he was heading to lunch. We heard the soft slam of the stairwell door a second later, and then the sirens screamed to life. Red lights strobed in the corners. A blaring alarm shattered what little sense of time we had left. The building went into lockdown mode, automatic bolts thudding into place. But the damage was done, and it was final. The sirens came first, shrieking through the October air, growing louder as they closed in. Within minutes, the school grounds looked like a war zone. Black and white cruisers jammed a parking lot, lights flashing. SWAT vans screeched into position at both entrances. A chopper circled overhead, its searchlight slicing across the courtyard like a blade. They ordered everyone to shelter in place. Lock the doors. Stay away from the windows. Some kids screamed. Others texted frantic messages under their desks. I remember looking out the narrow window by the door and watching officers in full riot gear stack up in formation, rifles drawn, fingers tight on the triggers. It didn't matter that the shooter was already gone. Protocol was protocol. They swept every hallway, kicked in every unlocked door. Even after Mr. Hayward had vanished, they treated the school like he was still lurking somewhere, waiting to finish the job. They dragged us out one by one, hands on our heads, guns aimed at our backs. We were treated like suspects at first. Detained, patted down, bags searched, phones confiscated. I remember the sour stench of fear rolling off everyone. Sweat, urine, vomit. It lingered in the air like smog. We were separated into makeshift interview rooms set up in the gym, folding tables, creaky plastic chairs. Detectives in bulletproof vests asked us the same questions over and over. What did you see? Where did he come from? Did he say anything? Do you know him? I could hear Eli being questioned 2 dividers down. Toby wouldn't even look up from his lap. Liam had gone full, cold-blooded, numb, monotone, dead-eyed. I kept my story simple, clean, polished. No, I told them. I'd never seen him before in my life. We all lied. They let us go eventually, but not before we saw the gurney. Rourke's body was zipped into 2 separate black bags, one for the torso, one for what was left of his head. The medical examiner's assistants wore double gloves and surgical masks, but they still winced when they lifted him. There was so much of him that didn't look human anymore, just meat and pulp, soaked through the stretcher and dripping onto the linoleum. As they wheeled him through the double doors, I caught a glimpse of what was left of his scalp, stringy and blood-matted, hanging loose like an old rag. His blood steamed in the cool air. That image still comes to me when I close my eyes. The school brought in crisis counselors the next day. Outside, contractors. State-certified grief response teams. They set up in the library and the auditorium, posted flyers in the hallways like it was some kind of wellness seminar. We were herded into groups and told to talk. How are you feeling today? Let's express our emotions through art. Tell us one thing you're grateful for. They lit vanilla-scented candles, played spa music, gave us coloring books and stress balls. One girl had a full-on breakdown halfway through a breathing exercise. Another kid threw a chair when they asked him to rate his anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10. I sat there, staring at the little cartoon dolphin on my coping worksheet. "You're safe now," the counselor said. I didn't respond. Because she was wrong. We weren't safe. And we weren't innocent. They offered one-on-one sessions, too. I tried, once. Told the guy I couldn't sleep. That I kept smelling blood in my room, even when nothing was there. He nodded and said it was normal. Trauma response. Suggested deep breathing techniques and herbal tea. Herbal tea. As if that could erase what we'd done. We didn't cry. There was a heaviness inside us that therapy couldn't reach, because we weren't victims. We were accomplices. It happened the night after the shooting. We met in the back of Liam's garage. Same place we used to sneak beers and talk shit about Rourke when things were just annoying, not life or death. Nobody spoke at first. Just silence and breathing. The kind that felt loaded, like even that might crack something open we couldn't put back together. Eli was the first to break. "We have to say something," he whispered. We didn't know he was gonna do that. "It's not right." He was pacing, hugging himself like he was freezing. His voice was hoarse, his eyes red. He hadn't stopped shaking since the shooting. Liam snorted. "He deserved worse," he said flatly, like he was just stating a fact. "After what he did to us. To you." Eli flinched, but didn't deny it. Toby sat in the corner, knees to his chest, fingernails chewed bloody. He hadn't spoken all day, just kept staring at this rust-colored stain on the floor like it might give him answers. No one talks, ever, and that was it. We didn't shake on it. No blood oath, just the understanding. The final lock on a door we all helped shut. We pass each other in hallways like ghosts, nodding, never stopping, never speaking. Yearbook photos show us smiling in different corners of the frame, pretending we were never close. Never a unit. Never what we were. But we all carry it. The memory. The moment. The sound of the shot. The smell of burnt powder clinging to our clothes. The way Rourke's blood hit the board in thick ropes, still hot. Bone, blood, smoke. It's with us every day, and it always will be. This is the Curator. I hope you've enjoyed today's scary story. Until next time.